This is The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform conversation series produced and hosted by Mark Travis Rivera, the professional storyteller. I believe that we must embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. So this series aims to share perspectives, insights, and stories from professionals around the world about the role that resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives. So, tune in, listen up, take notes, and recognize our shared humanity. This is The Shift. With 3 shots of espresso. So I am on fire.
Okay.
We are live, friend. I am so thankful for you, and I'll go into that formal stuff in a second. But I want to kick off the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Shift. My name is Mark Travis Rivera, and I use he, him pronouns, and I am a Puerto Rican queer disabled femme man based in Atlanta, Georgia. And I believe in embracing the power of story to create a more inclusive world as the CEO and founder of The Professional Storyteller, where I have 5 pillars of activities: choreography, coaching, consulting, speaking, and writing. When I launched this series 2 years ago, it was meant to prioritize people's lived experience across identities, explain why practitioners who work in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, business leaders, community organizers, and entrepreneurs need a holistic approach to shifting perspectives and fostering a deeper understanding of the human experience. The Shift, my mostly weekly live conversation series, is shifting the new year with a new time, format, and theme. Hence why we're having all these technical difficulties. The new theme relates to resistance and resilience, and we will examine the role resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives in 2025 and beyond as we prepare in the US for a second term of Trump as president and the shifts happening worldwide to roll back human rights. Given the times we are living in, I want to refocus the series to share stories of resilience and resistance throughout 2025 so we can be better equipped as a community to navigate these times. Starting next month, The Shift will be available on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts. So stay tuned for the launch of The Shift, a multi-platform series coming in February. I have been looking forward to this conversation for weeks, and I'm beyond honored to introduce today's guest. Yolo Akili Robinson, he, him, his, is a non-binary award-winning writer, healing justice worker, yogi, and the founder and executive director of BEAM, Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. BEAM is a 501c3 nonprofit national organization that builds ecosystems of care for Black and marginalized communities. BEAM funds, resources, and trains a network of Black therapists, wellness practitioners, and Black mental health organizations to provide wellness care to our most exploited and under-resourced communities. Under Yolo's leadership, BEAM became one of the leading Black orgs that funds mental health in Black communities. The organization has been given support from foundations and celebrities, including the MacArthur Foundation, Ford Foundation, celebrities like Jordan Peele, Kelly Rowland, Chloe and Haley, Debbie Allen, and many more. For his work, Yolo has received numerous accolades, including being recognized by the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, for Minority Mental Health Month in 2023. He has been an invited presenter at the National Academy of Sciences, Math, and Engineering, the Milken Institute, the Congressional Black Caucus Conference, and much more. He has been awarded the prestigious Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Equity Award for his work and featured at the BET Awards as an Empowerful Spotlight, highlighting his work facilitating the vision of BEAM. Notably, his writings and work have appeared on Shondaland, GQ, Women's Health, US Today, Vice, BET, Ebony, and Everyday Feminisms. He is the author of one of my favorite books, Dear Universe, Letters of Affirmation and Empowerment for All of Us, 2016 Michael Todd books, and a contributor to the New York Times bestseller, Tarana Burke and Dr. Brene Brown's anthology on Black vulnerability and shame resilience, You Are Your Best Thing, 2021 Random House Books. Yolo currently resides in Los Angeles, California, and thankfully he is safe and outside of the radius of the fire directly. But I know that you are being indirectly impacted. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Yes. Oh, it's always a joy to see you. I always feel like I don't get to see you enough, but whenever I do see you, my cup just overflows with gratitude. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Um, it's so funny because I'm using this teleprompter and I'm just like, oh, this is like legit. This platform is like giving me life. So I'm obsessed with it. But I realized I did not add the questions to the teleprompter, so I need to do that in the future. Um, but I just want to start off with how you doing, friend? It's been a minute. It's going a lot going on. How you doing?
yeah, great question. I would say today I guess I'm gonna start with feeling words. I'm feeling clear, I'm feeling grounded. Um, those are my feelings. I think how I feel. I think in my body, I feel a little rooted because I did my kind of worked out this morning and it always helps me get present in my body. I think overall, I'm just, in terms of things I'm managing, of course, you know, the realities of running an organization that's dedicated to emotional and mental health. And in this particular moment, when the stress in our communities is high, all of the nuances of what come with that, both within the institution as well as outside the institution. And so I'm definitely managing that, and I'm trying to be very clear about what I can control and focus on, and also getting and becoming and maintaining an increasing clarity around what am I here to do? What is the gift that I can provide this moment? And I think that's
Mm,
providing me a lot of solace and strength to know like this is what I'm called to do in this moment. This is my skill. I can't do everything, but I do this well. How can I continue to offer this to community, to the resistance that's building in this country? So
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here. It is so early where you are, so I appreciate you being
yeah,
up and at it. I'm like I don't start work usually until 10 a.m.
okay.
So I read a lot about your professional highlights in your wonderful bio. But who are you outside of the professional highlights I read in your bio? Because I know you have other roles that you played that are equally important to
Yeah. Um, well, one thing, I will say is that I'm grateful that the work I do in the world is not some wildly divorced thing from the core of who I am. Right? Like, you know what I
you.
mean? Like, I think for some people that's true. They do things and they're not really connected to who they are. I am naturally a nurturer. I'm grateful to be an auntie to three amazing who are amazing, Molly, Mason, and Miles. I'm grateful
Yeah.
to be a country person who is, from rural Georgia, rural Florida, um, who has a deep ancestry throughout the South, but also I'm learning more and more in the Caribbean. Um, I am a person who loves to play, who loves to nurture, who believes in the beauty and power of like healing and supporting in people's inner child, like right, And yeah, I'm kind of like a jokester. Like I think people who work with me would say that, like, it's a lot of jokes all day. I think that one thing I'm grateful for is as a student of spirit. Like I'm a person who is vigorously always studying spirituality, and that means Buddhism, it means Islam, which I'm fascinated with recently, and Christianity, and like also Confucianism, all the different systems and ways when people connect with and create anything. And so that's a big part of who I am as well. So yeah, I guess I was stuck there.
Yeah, I've known you for over a decade, and as I was preparing for this interview, I was like, how long have I known Yolo? And then Darnell Moore's birthday was a couple days ago, and one of
Hmm.
my Facebook memories is the picture of him and I at your book launch for Dear Universe. It was the first time I got to meet
Yeah,
you in person. So I
most
only got
definitely.
to meet Darnell in person for the first time because of you, and so shout out to you for bringing us together at the Strand. And I was like, damn, because I'm younger than folks realize, I guess. But I forget like how long I've been around this work, and it's like humbling to be in your presence. It always is, but especially at a time like now when you and your work is more vital than ever before because there is such a fragility going on right now, and there's so much tension and fear, and we know that all of that has implications on our mental well-being. And when I think about Dear Universe, to this day, like I still talk about that book and how profoundly impactful it was in my life as
Hmm.
a young college student getting ready to graduate and go into, they call the adult world. And I remember reading Dear Universe, and I just remember asking the universe, please use this book to help me guide myself to this next chapter. And your book and your words have always been and will always be, I think, influential. But that particular book has such a special place in my heart. And when I interviewed for my podcast, Marking the Path, I did ask you about book number 2, and you at that time I think Tarana Burke's and Brene Brown's book was already out, so I think we knew that. But I need more from you, Yolo. I know you're so busy doing a million things, but the world needs more writing from you because you have a way of storytelling that I think is really beautiful. So I just want to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have heard and received.
Yeah, no pressure on book number 2. I know people keep asking me about my book number 2. I'm like, "You'll get it when I have it." But what is your personal I wanna start with, what is your personal concept of resistance and resilience?
Yeah, that is a big, big question. What is my personal concept of resistance and resilience? I can talk about the ways in which I resist. And I think for me, one quote that kind of captures it is this quote. I can't remember the author, but essentially it says that the opposite of war is not peace. The opposite of war is creation. For
Mm,
me, I have chosen to dedicate my life, my purpose, to building and creating systems, frameworks, practices that don't rely on the dominant systems to exist, that honor the unique lineage and history of skills and strategies that we as Black people, Indigenous folks, people of color have. Um, and so not, um, I resist by creating and continuing creation really through that lineage of like, I don't need to necessarily go into the dominant system and try to reform that. I
mm,
respect a lot of people who do that because we need people who do that. Let me be very clear. I'm grateful for the people who are the warriors within these dominant systems because they keep them at bay, right? But I know that's not my work. You know what I mean? I know that like that's not where I shine. I think that my work has been very clear to like holding up this separate lineage of the work, which is really creating new systems and reimagining systems. And so that's how I resist. Of course, resilience is a very tricky term. I'm not, the people have contested it a lot in terms of the ways in which we kind of weaponize our white supremacy to be like, let's make all the people of color and the Black people resilient because they can endure all the trauma of the system.
yeah,
Um, the reality is we are alchemists, as people of African descent, as Black people, and we are alchemists and we know how to take what we have been given, even when it's so little, and transform it and transmute it into something beautiful and powerful. And I think that's the beauty of not just Black people, but marginalized and oppressed people across the world have done the same in many ways, right?
yeah,
And so I consider myself an alchemist. I consider myself a person who's trying to hold the lineage of alchemy to remind people about alchemy beyond therapy and Western psychology, beyond dominant psychiatric traditions. We have been doing care for ourselves and for our people for generations. So that's kind of how I resist and resist is I resist by building, by holding space, by
yeah,
reminding us of our reminding us that we are worthy and that we are beautiful, that we don't have to adopt and internalize these really problematic emotional frameworks to keep us in the stress.
yeah, and that we really are our best thing, right? Like, I think for me, um and I've been having a lot of conversations since the series launched this year with folks in my network like Amber Cabral and others around resilience. And, I said something once to someone. I was like, I'm tired of being resilient. I was like, as a premature baby born at 5.5 months, weighing 1 pound, I had to be resilient from the very first breath just to survive, right? Just like
Mm,
this is my birth. I was like, when do I just get to be soft and like comfortable and like I don't need millions of dollars. I just want to be able to make enough money where my bills are on auto pay and I don't have to think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like just auto pay everything. It's gonna always be in there, right? There's just like so I don't need millions. I just want enough to be comfortable and to be soft and because there's so much of a toll right now, I think even more so with Trump 2.0 around constantly having to be resilient and what that does to our emotional and mental health. So I want to ask you that question actually, which is the third question in the series I have for you, which is what toll does having to constantly be resilient have on our emotional and mental health? Because I think people often think of the idea of resilience as a positive thing, but there are
mm.
implications to our physical and psychological wellness when you're constantly in a state of resilience.
Yeah, well, first I would say, Mark, is I don't believe that we have to be resilient all the time. And I think we're challenging that idea in itself that the need we need spaces where we cannot be resilient, where we can lean into our pain and our distress, where we can cry that out, or we can be in our emotions and moods, whatever they are. We need more spaces that allow us to be in that and honor our own natural rhythms and cycles, because responding to this political moment with psychological distress in our nervous system means we are alive because of the moment, right? And so we don't want to suppress that in the favor of performing resilience or performing perfection, because sometimes resilience and perfection can be very similar to people frame
Oh,
them. It's like I'm resilient, or I'm perfect. I can pretend like I can stuff down my emotions and my feelings and pretend like this doesn't impact me. And I think that we need to like say that actually we can't be resilient all the time. We can't be soft all the time either.
yeah,
There are periods in our life where we need soft spaces we can be soft. We need spaces maybe if we want to engage in resilience. But we also have to understand there are times in our life and our journey where we'll need to be fighters, where we'll need to be aggressive, where we'll need to like stand our ground, right? So I think for me, the work, and I think of my healing work, it's really helping people understand that we need the full range of our expression, and that all of those parts of us have a place in different moments. Like I think about it with my nephews and nieces, right? I'm trying to teach them all the time, as well as with their parents, that it's okay to cry. Like, it's okay. There's a time to be sad and cry. I should honor that. And guess what? There's also a time when you need to stand up for yourself, right? That all those have a place in your expression, right? We're not telling them don't ever cry. Don't ever cry. You got to be hard all the time. No, we're not telling them that. We're telling them, like, hey, you got to cry sometimes. We'll make space for that. And
yeah,
then sometimes we have to also do this. And I want to encourage anybody out there who feels like they have to be resilient off of perfectionism,
yeah,
where does to maybe challenge that and try to cultivate or find the spaces where you don't have to put on that mask, because resilience can be a mask. You
yeah.
know what I mean? It can be. And finding the spaces and people who allow you to be wherever you are and be present with
Yeah, and I'm putting on my glasses, y'all. I take the time to do all my eye makeup so nice today, but I'm seeing the screen and my question list as like a blur, and I was like, I'm getting to the point where I need my glasses to be able to look at the screen long term. So
that. Do
welcome
what
to
you
your
need to
journey.
do.
So y'all saw a little bit without the glasses, but I'm wearing the glasses the rest of the interview. Um, Yolo, and my therapist has been making a lot of space for my tears lately, because I used to be able to cry like as a way to release things all the time when I was growing up, and somewhere between like my mid-20s to like my early 30s, somewhere along the way, I started to not be able to cry.
Mm,
And so I started working with a new therapist here in Atlanta, a black psychiatrist and a black man psychiatrist. And it's been amazing living in Atlanta because I've gotten the most culturally competent mental health care of my life here.
mm,
Um, and it's such a privilege to live in a city where I can get culturally competent care from folks who are either Afro Latinx or part of the African diaspora, and it's been really nice. But one of the things he has been making me do is cry a lot in my sessions.
mm,
And at first I was like trying to fight it back because, and now he's helping me realize it's okay to cry again. And I think sometimes we often bottle things up because we're so afraid that if we start crying, we won't stop. Right? There's
yeah.
a level of like, if the dam breaks, I will flood this world of mine.
Mhm,
And so when we're talking about, and I am feeling the tension right now between, and I said this in my morning reflection today around apathy and how
mm,
we as a collective are stronger. The minority majority is stronger if we do this together rather than allowing them to pit us against each other. And I'm
mhm,
seeing a level of apathy, a level of individualism that has been creeping up for a while in the US context, especially.
mhm,
Um, but the filters of politeness have gone out the window. And so people are celebrating these mass deportation raids. They're celebrating, all these different things just because someone didn't vote a certain way or someone didn't vote at all, or, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what they want. They want us to be infighting so we don't have the energy and the focus on the oppressors, right? And it's only been a week since the new administration has taken over. And
mhm.
to say that I felt last week was the longest week of my life is no exaggeration. What advice do you have for folks who are struggling to process the current state of the US while trying to keep their daily, keep living their daily lives because
Yeah.
it just seems like we're being inundated.
Yeah. So the first piece I want to talk about is the kind of metaphor you brought up that I hear very commonly and quite a bit, right? Is this fear of if I cry, the dam might break, and then all quote unquote hell break loose. I always encourage people to consider that. Think of it like a faucet.
Hmm.
You can turn it on a little bit. You can cut it off, right? Like make space for you to let that flow happen. Because when you talk about this apathy piece, what I hear or what I see in our communities is a lot of it's grief, right?
Hmm.
A lot of grief. We're grieving the loss of relationships. We're grieving the loss of ideas that we had about how the world was. We're grieving losses. If you're in the Democrats, if you're in the Democratic liberal kind of bubble, if you're a Democrat, you're grieving the loss of the potential president that you chose, the
Yeah.
potential reality you chose. And so that grief needs space to be able to come through your body. And that's why crying is so important. Like literally when you cry, it literally releases chemicals in your body that like help you create ease. Like it eases cortisol levels in your body, right? So we need space to cry. We need space to be able to be able to release that. And so I want to encourage people, find some space in your life. But I tell people like make some crying time. And like sometimes that just means I just make some time. Like that's an hour you dedicate. Like, I want to feel what I'm feeling and not run away from it and not keep moving so much that I'm running away from it if I can. If it's
Yeah.
15 minutes, if it's 20 minutes, take some time to release. Because when you do that grieving, you make room for other things that you may want in your life.
Yeah.
But when you're holding it all here, it's all not nothing else can get in. Like
Yeah.
no other like
Yeah.
nothing else can get in because you
Physically feel
physically,
it. Yeah.
absolutely, somatically, it's
Yes.
like
It's
you're like
all
tight,
here. Yeah.
right? And so you think about when you start crying, what happens to people's bodies, their shoulders drop, right? Like you know what I mean? They kind of might even get hunched over, like it's like they're letting go of things.
Yeah.
We're
Just,
letting go of things, and we
yeah.
have a lot of grief. We have a lot of grief in this country and in this world right now, as we are witnessing emotional immaturity and narcissistic traits
Yeah.
dominate, right? So that's one piece I will say. The piece I will say for folks who are trying to go on through their day, a part of me says, quite frankly, don't go through your day as if it's business as usual. It's not, right? So a part of what capitalism and this iteration of it in the United States does is it makes a space where we are to the wire, struggling to survive, to pay bills, to take care of our kids. We're so inundated with the impossibilities of the way things are structured, right? How much childcare is, groceries, gotta work 9 hour days, 5 days a week, et cetera. Gotta make sure the house is taken care of, all these things that it keeps us away from the real political advocacy that we kind of need in these moments.
Yeah.
And so I think that what's going to happen and what happened in many movements is that we're going to say, actually, we're not interested in pretending like everything's normal because this is not normal. And now we need to like actually direct that frustration and anger into some kind of action politically, which means maybe I support a political movement, maybe I get engaged in advocacy, whatever that looks like. Finding a channel for that to help you feel some sense of empowerment in this really difficult moment is important. And I think
Yeah.
that we're going to see more of our folks take it to the streets and be like, actually, I'm not going to pretend like this is business as usual because there are people in this administration who are moving from deeply fear-based, trauma-based places, and there is no one who's going to check them because
Right.
everyone is afraid of them. So we as the people have to collectively check them and figure out
Yeah.
what that looks like.
And I think that we, the people, I think is such an important point. And also, together we're stronger, right? And so I think what
Hmm.
I've been trying to get, because as a Puerto Rican, my family spans the color spectrum and the ideological spectrum of political beliefs and religious thought.
Hmm.
And I have some MAGA extremists in my
Hmm.
family. I have far
Hmm.
left progressives in my family. And then I consider myself a more liberal, but not as maybe I'm not as far left as most people think I am.
Hmm.
Because I'm not an abolitionist because I don't believe in certain things.
Hmm.
And so, but one of the things I've always known this to be true, which is why people ask me, why do you call yourself a professional storyteller? Why is your mission to embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world? And I said because I know through my own lived experience that stories connect us, right? I know that when I read your words in Dear Universe, I felt seen and understood.
Mm,
I know that when people read my first collection, they see themselves reflected back in these pages, right?
mm,
Or they get a window into a lived experience that they don't have because they can
mhm,
build greater empathy and better understanding, right?
mhm,
And there is
mhm,
a shared humanity that I think that of all things that white supremacy culture and colonization took from us, I think our communal way of being has been greatly diminished by this
mhm,
individualistic approach to America and the
mhm,
American dream. And it
mhm,
is, I think, of all the evils of the world, colonization doing that to our communities, especially, I think, was the
mhm,
most damaging
mhm,
because it has allowed for this crab in a barrel mentality, has allowed for pull yourself by the bootstraps. Well, honey, what if you ain't got no boots? Like, what bootstraps are you
mhm.
gonna pull up, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's so much going on. And I want to pivot a little bit because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about more about your organization, which has been doing YOLO from like just from the outside looking in. I have seen how much impact Beam has had. I've shared countless resources from your organization to people that I know. The micro grants for parents and families, and the graphics, the ads, all that you're doing, the training. I mean, y'all are doing so much, and it's such a beautiful thing to witness. But share with us a bit about Joseph Beam, which I know was the inspiration behind the name of your organization, and who was Joseph Beam for those of us who may not be as aware of our history, and yeah, why you named the organization after him.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I wouldn't even say that I named the organization after him. I would say that I was pulled towards. I would say it was me. It was pulled to. I would say spirit pulled me towards that acronym and that naming. And it's funny because where I sit right now, there's a picture of him kind of looking at me that I have on my dining room table. But
Beautiful.
I always tell people the story about Beam is, in terms of its naming, was I was trying to figure out an acronym to kind of hold like Black emotional and mental health, Black mental health, and it was like, what would I call this? And then I wrote out Black emotional mental health, and I was like, oh, the acronym would be BA. I guess we can make it M, take the H off or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's Beam. And then I literally heard a voice kind of come to me and say, yes, like Joseph. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was just one of those moments that felt serendipitous and that I kind of was called to do something. Um, so Joseph was a Black gay man, an HIV activist who lived in Philadelphia in the 80s, was an organizer, an author. He created some of the earliest and, well, highly celebrated anthologies of Black gay men's writings that explored the realities of what Black gay men were navigating during that time period, which were the challenges of living with HIV and AIDS, the challenges of the early days of the AIDS pandemic, as well as depression, as well as love and sexuality and also feminism, really reconciling with how do they interrogate male privilege, how they interrogate male power, and the ways in which it was destroying Black communities because it was lack of uh, awareness or engagement with it as a concept, right? And so his work really kind of, for me, created a new possibility model for me in terms of what leadership could look like and also in terms of who I could be. I At that point I was in college when I first got introduced to Josephine. And while there were other, I would say more liberal, centrist Black gay men who were doing amazing work, they didn't resonate with me in terms of what I was interested in doing and being.
Mm,
And I think Joseph and Essex and Asado, who were much more radical, more leftist, really resonated with me and was like, oh, finally, a Black gay man who see how misogyny and sexism is actually playing out in Black gay men's communities, who are thinking about how do we change our behavior, as opposed to what I saw with a lot of the dominant gay male culture, where it was like, "Oh, that's just the way it is. We're going to engage it, and we're going to be mad about it, but we're going to engage it, and we're not really going to change it, right?"
right.
You know what I mean? Like that was kind of what I was seeing, and what I see now to this day. To be quite frank, everybody's complaining about blah 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 blah, but nobody's like, "Let me be different in this." Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Let's build something different. Let me build a different way of relating to Black people. And so Joseph, his work was really powerful for that for me, and it gave me permission to kind of show up in my gender and my expression differently, and also my leadership differently than I think what I saw at the time. So those are just many things I recommend people check out in the life. Brother to Brother, two of the anthologies. They're human stories, they're beautiful stories. You can't read the whole book without crying, without having some re-release and like,
You can release some
some
things.
learning. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember when I used to be a counselor at a community center in Atlanta called the Crib, and one of the things I had the group do is we actually read Brother to Brother out
Mm,
loud. So it's about 10 young queer people, and mostly black queer, but black and Latino queer people. We had them sit in a circle and would read different parts of the book, and they were so shocked because they were like, "Oh my God, I didn't even know." This is the same stuff we're going through, and these people, oh, this is 20 years ago. And I'm like, yes, and they just didn't have a sense of the history and no and like and even the language and not knowing Marlon Riggs, etc., right? And not
yeah.
knowing and also finding language for themselves to talk about the things they were experiencing that felt very similar to the things that like, Joseph and the many people in those anthologies talked about. So yeah.
Yeah. Mm, I often think about I studied gender sexuality in college as well as communications, and I was taking this like LGBT media representation course, I think maybe my junior year of college. And it was led by a white woman who was, at the time you wouldn't say masculine center, but that's what the appropriate phrase is now, but you would say a little more, mask, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. And she had us watching a bunch of queer content, but it was all mostly white. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much missing in the lexicon of queer representation of people of color." And of course, I grew up, I was born in the early 90s, grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, the era of Noah's Ark, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was the first time I ever saw a gay Puerto Rican
Mm-hmm.
on my screen. Now, mind you, he was hyper
Mm-hmm.
masculine and hypersexualized. I am no Ricky. But it was that in conjunction with Noah, the more femme character, it was really powerful to see a part of my identities reflected back at me, right? Because I often say
Mm-hmm.
we cannot become what we cannot consume in the stories we see on television, read about, or hear about.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about the stories you have told, whether it's, the anthology, you are your best thing, or your universe, why do you think it's so important? And this is not on the question list I created, so this is off the top of my head. But why do you think it's important that we as queer folks of color write and own our narrative?
Mm. Well, I think it's important to leave evidence, to leave history, to leave lineage, to let people know we were here.
Hmm.
To I think the importance of sharing our stories is not only for us psychologically powerful, but it does leave breadcrumbs. It leaves a trail behind people to find themselves, right? I found so much of myself by reading the work of Tony K. Bambara, by reading Audre Lorde's work, by
Wow.
reading Esther Perel, even like by reading, so many people, Tarana Burke's memoir, so many memoirs and the stories helped me find myself. And by helping me find myself, I found my people. And I think by finding our people, we find the connection and the alchemy, the power of alchemy, the power to be able to transform and transmute the really terrible things we experience is found in community. And so I think that like it's so important to share those stories, share those experiences. We're in a moment now where there are reels, people telling you everything, right? And people are like, oh, why are they telling their business? Because some of these things need to actually come to the light.
Yeah.
We can't all be like, ain't nobody finna talk about that. Like somebody's gonna share that because it actually gives us less shame when people share it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not the only person who struggles with that, no matter how difficult it may be. I saw someone share about like, really navigating sex addiction and sex compulsion, right? Something that like, and you see in the comments people saying things like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. Don't tell anybody about that. That's a part of their experience. That's a part of a lot of our experiences.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a power in saying, this is something I'm navigating. Like here's what I'm learning,
Yeah.
and I think that's what my life really is about. So many times people will kind of reach out to me and say, oh, you tweeted this or you posted this on Instagram. And, you know, people receive that sometimes as me speaking from a mountaintop when it's really actually me sharing what I've learned. Like, like, this is what I'm learning. Like, actually, I'm
Yeah.
learning this
And
or I'm seeing this.
you know what I love about this, and because I've known you for a while, and I'm dealing with more of this now, 12 years in. People look at the work we do, and they forget that there's a whole queer person of color, young experience behind the work we do, right? And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
we're more than what we do, and while our purpose and the work we do are synced and linked,
Mm-hmm.
we're allowed to be queer and messy and imperfect and in my case sloppy at times, right? And so it happens. I live in Atlanta. I go bar hopping from time to time. Like it's gonna happen, right? And so what I always love about you is that every once in a while we'll post something like, "Oh, he's thirst trapping," or he's doing the kickboxing videos or the boxing videos, and the next thing you think you're talking about like spiritualism and enlightenment and
Yeah.
mental health, and there's a duality to all of us. And what
Mm-hmm.
I've always admired about you was your ability to show all of yourself that you feel comfortable sharing in a way that makes me feel like I get to see all of YOLO.
Mm. And, I appreciate you sharing that. I saw really early on,
I'm listening. I'm
but
just
not,
asking the "You Are Your Best Thing" anthology. I
yeah,
compelled you me
I,
to
s-
actually your essay.
thanks to Silk. I saw really early on with a lot of people who were in political movements, a lot of people who were in liberal movements, this commitment to kind of becoming this stoic, or presenting this stoic image, right?
Mhm.
That I've got it together, that I'm that bitch, all the languages people say and things and do. And I was like, I'm not really interested in that. Because I
Yeah,
saw the way people, because I think through my counseling work, I saw people were suffering through that. They were suffering silently while trying to project perfection. And I was like, I don't think, and I don't see it as duality. I see it all as parts of the same circle. This is a
yeah.
human being. I'm interested in being very clear. Hey, you're engaging a human being, not a stoic projection of a god-like concept person. I'm
Not
not
a
interested in that.
brand, a
Not a
human.
brand, not a brand. I'm a human being.
Yeah,
And all these things are a part of me. I am spiritual. I am silly. I am goofy. I mess up things. I don't get it right all the time. And I think that sometimes our culture really doesn't know how to reconcile with the full human because we're so used to engaging caricatures and brands and represent.
yeah. And it's I'm not gonna cry. I've told myself I'm not gonna cry in this episode because I figured you might say some shit that makes me get teary eyed. But
Let
one of the
yourself do whatever you want to. Let yourself do whatever you want
things
to.
makeup on YOLO. One of the things that I have been navigating, especially since moving to Atlanta, because Atlanta is the longest city I've lived in since I left New
Mm.
Jersey.
Oh wow.
So this is the first city that I've moved around quite a bit. For those who don't know me, I went from New York City. I grew up born in Miami, grew up in Jersey, lived in New York City, lived in the Bay Area, and now Atlanta is the second longest city I've ever lived in. And
Nice.
it's a city that feels like home. And I spent most of my 20s searching for home. And one of
Mm.
the things I'm learning now that I'm setting roots in a city, in a place that feels like home, is that you can't really unpack shit until you have a steady foundation to unpack the
Mm.
shit so
Mm.
you can actually unpack the boxes and examine
Mm.
things without
Mm.
being in transit. And so there are
Mm.
things I'm learning about myself, things that I am learning to recognize and change. And I want to read this quote excerpt from your essay in "You Are Your Best Thing." And I haven't. It's been a while since I read it, so I'm excited to revisit this essay. It's entitled "Unlearning Shame and Remembering Love." And in the opening quote, it says, "Sometimes I wake up and have to remind myself there is nothing wrong with me. I have patterns to unlearn, new behaviors to embody, and wounds to heal. But there is nothing wrong with me and the core of who I am. I am unlearning generations of harm and remembering love. It takes time." And whew, I was like, why did my spirit tell me to grab this book? Because I was like, I wasn't planning on that, but that it was just so yeah, so it just resonates with me deeply. And I have to long after you're gone, when your bones become dust, your words will continue to live on. What do you hope to shift in society through your work and your words?
Mm. Wow. What a question. What do I hope to shift in society through my work and my words? I see myself as passing a baton that was passed to me, and many people, right? Like that I like as a healer, as a root worker, as a cultural worker, as a part of that lineage of folks. My biggest hope is just to when I pass that baton, to make sure the baton got a plate up on there, maybe it's a plate I'm passing to, maybe it's a meal, maybe it's some sustenance and some nourishment, so for the next generation they can continue on, because I know I'm only possible because of what was passed down to me. And there was so much brilliance and so much wisdom and beauty passed down to me. Let me use my life to learn, to love, to be, and give the next generation something that helps them continue that course, so that for generations down, long after I'm gone, 5, 10, 15, 100 years, whatever, and whatever humanity looks like then, there's something that helped people feel more whole, they're more honest, they gave them skills to embrace and love themselves wherever they were. That, like, wherever I am is where the lesson is, right? And I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
And that perfectionism and is something that people recognize is a prison, is a psychological prison, is holding us hostage, and that let's allow ourselves to be more free and connected. So I hope that that's my work. Among many things, I could talk all day about the goals I have, what I hope for mental health systems, what I hope for care systems, but I think, broadly speaking, that kind of encompasses my hope, is that, like, let me pass the baton, and because there'll be a period of this journey when I'm done. Like, there's a period, like, it might be 20, 30 years, and I'm like, all right, y'all got it. I did my part, and I'm gonna go in the woods and with my garden, and y'all stay blessed. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Enjoy
I
your
think that
elderhood.
right, that's a part of the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yolo, there's never enough time. I feel like every time we talk, I feel like I can talk to you for hours. And I know we had a delayed start because of technology problem, so I apologize. But I wanna before we wrap up, I wanna ask you, how can people connect with you? How can they support the work that you do with Beam? It
Yeah,
is such vital work that you're doing across the nation, but especially in major areas like LA and Atlanta, New York City, and beyond. How can folks support your organization, and where can they connect with y'all to learn more about your work?
absolutely. So you can visit our website at beam.community. It is a dot community. There's no .com. That is intentional. You can also find us on Instagram, at _beam, BAM org. You can also find us on, of course, LinkedIn at Black Emotional Mental Health Collective, or Beam. You can get involved with the work. One, we have virtual and in-person opportunities that happen across the United States, every month. If you don't live in Los Angeles and LA, where we have our monthly healing circle spaces, you also can attend our virtual healing circle spaces, which are really great spaces for people to come learn, connect, learn different healing strategies, everything from somatics, learn about PTSD, learn about how to support your communities, all kinds of different things. And you also can find tools on our website and videos that you can share and engage with your loved ones, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of great activities. We have toolkits on our website, and things you can use. So please check us out. Of course, you can always make a donation too. You can do that as well. We are a
A tax
nonprofit.
deductible donation, may I add?
Yes, we are nonprofit organizations. That's an option there too. You can apply for a grant. There's a lot of things you can do with Beam. So check us out. For myself, you can find me at Yolo Akili, Yolo Akili, on all platforms, Blue Sky, as well as Instagram. Yeah, and you can get engaged with the work. But I think the biggest piece is check out our website, no matter who you are, really. I
Mm,
always tell people that Beam centers Black people, but we always say all the homies are welcome, right? Like, you know what I mean? But we center the Black experience, which the Black experience, it's very diverse, right? The Black experience is the Puerto Rican experience, is the Dominican experience, is the Panamanian experience, is the African experience, right? So it's very nuanced, and we're trying to grow into that nuance more and let ourselves shake out, because all of us in Beam were like, well, I'm also Dominican heritage, or I'm also from Haiti. Like, we're trying to hold that. So it's not just meaning African American, which even African American means all those things, quite
right.
frankly. so,
Yeah,
so
there's
yeah,
so
so
much
they would add.
nuance. And I have a sister who, when she visits me in Atlanta, she feels like she's like, why are people staring at me? Because up north, her being Afro Latina, people are not trying to
Mm,
categorize her race, right?
mhm,
Like here, I'm considered a
mhm,
white man.
mhm,
Here, she's considered some exotic. Yeah, I don't know
mm,
why people think I'm white in Atlanta, but it is what it is. But I'd never experienced that anywhere else
mm.
in where I've lived, in the West Coast,
Neither.
in the East Coast, right? And so we
Mhm,
understand that there is a diaspora.
mhm,
But I
mhm.
find that a lot of folks, in particular in the South, don't understand that,
Yeah.
or don't
Or,
want
or,
to understand that, I should say.
yeah. Or the frameworks they've been given, like,
Yeah,
even myself growing up in the South has been very, if you unless I would say certain parts of the South, because I also grew up in South Florida, where we were very clear. There were Cubans, there were Puerto Ricans, there were Jamaicans. Like
Yeah,
there was a lot of clarity around who you were and who your people was. But
yeah.
in the South of Georgia, particularly, where the racial categorizations have been so oversimplified, where it's been black and white, and that's it, and everybody in between is kind of like, man, maybe not giving credence and
Oh,
attention.
yeah,
Right, exactly, right. That sometimes those oversimplified frameworks can dominate for a lot of communities who
yeah,
aren't used to engaging folks, with nuance. So hopefully
yeah.
that's changing.
Yeah, I think slowly, especially now that Atlanta has had so many transplants come and kind of
It's a different.
the different city.
It's not the Atlanta that I was pumping around the streets in. Okay, let me tell you, it's
No,
708 and then Piedmont Park. It's very different. Okay.
I'm experiencing a different Atlanta than you did.
Yes, very much
But
so.
I just want to share to please support Yolo's work. Be sure to order your copy of Dear Universe, and if you haven't already, check out the Tarana Burke and Brene Brown anthology, which features Yolo's essay entitled "You Are Your Best Thing." I know eventually Yolo will release a second book or a new essay or
Mhm.
something, so be sure to subscribe to the Beam newsletter and their websites and check out them out on social media. Make a donation if you can to the white allies who often support my work. You should make a recurring monthly donation to Beam and to make sure that we're putting our money where our mouths are. I also wanted to share quickly that The Shift will be taking February 4th off. So we're a mostly weekly series. But starting on the 4th, you will be able to listen to recordings of The Shift on multi-platforms, including YouTube for vodcasts and wherever you stream your podcast with the official The Shift, a multi-series platform conversation series, Do the Professional Storyteller. So more information on that. In February, I have the honor of to be in conversation with my dear friend and colleague Amber Cabral. And I'll have Dr. John Paul on to talk about their new upcoming memoir, which I'm super, super thrilled about. And I also will have a dear friend and colleague, Palaska Ramirez. Again, having more conversations and stories about resistance and resilience in the era that we're living in. And, whether you are just tuning into the Shifters community, we call ourselves the Shifters, whether you're just tuning into the Shifters community or you've been following me for the last 2 years, keep sharing and following because I believe that stories connect us. And the best way to have connection is to foster community. And the best way to foster community is to have conversation. So thank you, Yolo, for being here. Thank you for being a light, a possibility model, for being a total badass, and for all that you represent and all that you mean to me throughout the last 10 plus years. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Thank you for all the love and light you make in the world as well. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
for you.
You too. So next time you're in Atlanta, hit me up because I'm here now.
I will.
Hair flip, hair flip. I'm still not used to being bald. I used to have hair. I can just have flip earrings. Anyways, thank y'all so much. Yolo, thank you for your time and your energy. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Take care of yourself and each other and be well.